They say you can't step into the same river twice, because the river has changed, and so have you. But they never speak of what the river remembers. The river remembers the parts of you that were never spoken. The tears you blinked away too quickly. The names you whispered in the dark. The moments you stood in silence, too full of grief or wonder to speak. The river remembers the versions of you that the world forgot. But your soul never did. She didn't come here to run, not this time. She came because she couldn't carry it anymore. The past, the masks, the pretending to be fine. She came because something inside her, something deeper than reason, older than logic, had begun to whisper again. Come back to the river. The place where she once shut down. The place where her voice disappeared. The place where a version of her, younger, wilder, more honest, had been left behind. She had avoided it for years, chased achievement, busyness, perfection. But the call of the river is patient. It doesn't shout, it waits. In her world, time was currency. Deadlines, meetings, measurable progress. But in the presence of the river, time bends. Not lost, but stilled. She'd always believed that healing meant going back. Undoing, correcting, fixing what was wrong. But now, she wondered, what if healing is forward? What if it's in the moment when we finally stop grasping? The Stoics taught, you control your thoughts and actions. Outcomes, not people, not the past. But she had confused control with safety. What if safety wasn't in knowing, but in allowing, in feeling deeply, but clinging to nothing? She kneels, runs her fingers across the surface. Ought to possess it. Just to feel. It's cold, alive, ancient, like the river is older than memory, yet still remembers her. This was not just a place. This was a mirror. A place where emotion was not judged. Where the earth did not require her to be useful. Where she was allowed to simply exist. She didn't need to explain why she had returned. The river already knew. She came to ask a question she'd never dared voice aloud. Can I let go? Without forgetting? Can I stop carrying this without abandoning who I used to be? Can I release the weight without erasing the love? She had spent years talking about herself. Therapy, conversations, reflection. But she hadn't spent much time simply being with herself. Not trying to fix. Not trying to analyze. Just sitting in presence. Witnessing what arises. She remembered what Seneca said. Sometimes even to live is an act of courage. And this sitting still beside what hurt. This not running. This breathing into memory without bracing. This was her act of courage. She closes her eyes. Not to escape, but to enter. To enter the memory. To enter the breath. To enter the present. Where letting go can begin. Not with force. Not with demand. But with willingness. With softness. With space. She came to this river with questions. But the river didn't give answers. It gave presence. It didn't erase the past. It held it like water holds a falling leaf. And maybe that was enough. The weight beneath the water. Letting go doesn't begin with forgetting. It begins with feeling, fully, fiercely, without the need to tidy it into a lesson. She had come here carrying what she thought were memories. But they weren't memories. They were weights. Folded letters she had never read aloud. Words she'd swallowed to keep peace. Losses she had framed as strength. Each object she brought here wasn't just a symbol. It was a story. A chapter left unfinished. A goodbye never spoken. She hadn't allowed herself to grieve what she couldn't explain. And now, in the hush of this river, the grief arrived, not as pain, but as remembering. She sees herself, a younger version, standing in a hallway, holding a phone, words caught in her throat. The camera circles slowly. She tries to speak, but doesn't. The scene dissolves. Stoicism doesn't teach you to ignore pain. It teaches you to choose your response. But how can you choose what you never allowed yourself to feel? This was not wallowing. This was witnessing. And in witnessing, she reclaimed a part of herself long buried beneath performance. She places a hand on the stone she brought. Smooth, round, heavy, she holds it to her chest. Then slowly places it in the river. The water carries it gently. There is no ceremony, only release. She didn't need closure. She needed honesty. And that kind of honesty, the kind whispered into the silence, is the beginning of freedom. In her journals, she once wrote, "I don't know how to let go." But now she knew. Letting go is not something you do. It's something you allow. The river was not here to take her stories. It was here to hold them. Long enough for her to realize she didn't have to carry them all alone. Sometimes, strength looks like walking away. Sometimes, it looks like staying. But today, her strength looked like weeping beside the truth. The stillness between stories. There is a stillness that follows release. Not the emptiness of loss, but the spaciousness of healing. She didn't feel lighter because something was gone. She felt lighter because she had stopped fighting it. There's a kind of peace that isn't about answers. It's about no longer needing them. She used to crave clarity like a destination. Now, she welcomes mystery as a companion. The Stoics taught her, you can only lose what you cling to. And she had clung to so much: identities, memories, expectations. Now, with empty hands, she discovered something rare. Presence. Stillness had once been something she feared. A space where the mind wandered, where loneliness waited. But now, she found it full of texture, nuance, intimacy. She was beginning to see her life not as something to fix, but something to witness. In Stoic teaching, there is a word, ataraxia, a state of serene calm. Not because the world is quiet, but because you are. She used to chase peace through achievement. Now she meets it in silence. Not every day feels profound. Some feel soft, quiet, undramatic. But those days, the ordinary ones, become her sanctuary. Stillness is not something you find. It's something you allow. Something you remember. And something you choose again and again. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of not knowing. The choice to begin again. Letting go was never about erasing. It was about making space. And now, in that space, something new arrives. Not clarity like a lightning bolt, but warmth like the sun returning after a long winter. She had thought she needed to find herself. But now she understood. She had always been here. She just needed to choose. To return? The Stoics taught, if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. She once feared beginning again. Feared being seen as lost, as unsure. But now, she honors it. Because beginning again is not failure. It is faith. She no longer rushed to narrate her life. She let it unfold. Word by word. Breath by breath. She no longer needed dramatic gestures to prove her progress. She understood now the sacred hides in the ordinary. Peace is not a destination. It's a practice. A returning, a choosing again and again to stay present. To begin again, she had to face herself. Not the one she performed for others, but the one who waited beneath all the roles. And when she did, she found something unexpected. Not brokenness, not shame, but grace. The river Withy. There comes a moment in every journey where nothing new needs to be said. No insight, no realization, just breath, just being. She no longer needed to be reborn. She no longer needed to become someone else. Because she had remembered the truth. She was never lost, just waiting to be met. The Stoics called it human flourishing, not through perfection, but through virtue, through alignment, through the quiet knowing that your soul and your actions have finally shaken hands. She walked not because she needed to arrive, but because she loved walking. Stillness is not a place, it's a way. And the river she searched for was always within. She does not leave healed, she leaves awake. And that, she now understands, is more than enough.